guys, that's your Shadow Legends. Welcome to the video. I'm glad to have you all here today. It's gonna be a good one today, guys. Do I say that every video? I do. I apologize.
Ain't no sorry.
Send us some love, some positive vibes your way, especially if you need them out there today. You know what? We did a video yesterday or the day before. I don't know. I lose track. It's 365 days of raid here in the Ash household. But we did a video on Carnage. And this dude's a monster. I really love him. He's super misunderstood. Really fun video. And he has an ability that only one champion in the game has. Guess who? And it got me thinking. How many abilities, I guess when I say ability, I mean a buff or a debuff or something like really tied to active skills, has only one champion has it right inside the game. And today I thought it'd be really fun to take a look at these ultra rare skills or abilities, debuffs mainly, but also explain what they do, because some of these debuffs, since only one champion has them, and odds are you don't have all these champions, well, it's good to at least know exactly what they do, because sometimes we have an impression of a debuff, kind of get a general feel, but we don't know the full complexity of some of these. Anyway, let's start out with, I'm going to start with kind of my more fringe, like borderline, should I include them or should I not include them? And there's two of those sort of abilities, and the rest are just straight up debuffs, right? So the first one is actually going to be a freebie champion, and it's Skeletor, right? And you might see where I'm going here already on this one. Why can't I see him right in front of my face? There we go. I'm blocking him. It's Skeletor with the petrification, right? So listen, our bias and Mithrala both have an RNG chance at petrification on their passives. But Skeletor is the only champion in the game who can place the petrification debuff.
Hot damn!
He can choose who to put it on. And petrification is a very strong debuff indeed. What does it do? Well, petrification, a champion under petrification debuff will have all of their buffs removed, unable to take their next turn. While under petrification debuff, the champion will be unable to receive buffs and is susceptible to receiving more debuffs. Instant effects do not work on champions under petrification debuffs, except for the remove debuff effect. Finally, while under petrification debuff, a champion will only receive 40% of the incoming damage. However, incoming damage from bomb debuffs is increased threefold. So there we go. Skeletor, a freebie, a daily login loyalty champion, is the only champion that you can choose who to place petrification on. So very unique. You could argue that since a couple others have it again in their passives, that it's maybe not on the same tier as some of the other ones we'll talk about. But still, I mean, I think it's, we had to include my man Skeletor. Cue the Skeletor clip.
Silence, you furry fool! I've had it with your whining and bumbling.
So the next one that was a little bit borderline to me, guys, was actually a AoE buff spread. All buff spread. 100%. And it's my man, Gamaran. Gamaran's nasty now. I loved what they did with the buff on this champion. Check out this Thief of Blood ability. It's nasty. An AoE attack, 100% chance to steal all buffs from each enemy. He's stealing every buffs from every enemy. And then he's applying a buff spread after he steals, taking all buffs from this champion and placing them on all allies. What a nasty ability, man. Very, very unique. Now, there are a couple honorables similar to an Arbias and a Mithrala on the petrification on the Skeletor list, but they're nowhere near as good or really even comparable to what Gamaran can do. And it's Torgon the Conjoined. He has a buff spread, taking a random buff from each ally and placing it on all allies. It's one random buff, and it's, 20% chance can be booked up to 50%. Not quite a Gamaran stealing all the buffs and spreading all the buffs. And then actually, a little honorable to my man Loki. Man, probably another Loki video coming up soon, because this guy just continues to impress me, right? Anyway, he has, it's not a buff or a debuff, so I didn't include it, but he's the only evade champion, so that's a super unique skill too. So I guess he deserves a spot in the video, a little feature, if you will. And Loki can freaking evade What does evade do? It gives you a chance at dodging the attack and all the accompanying effects. This guy's hard to kill and he's hard to CC. But not only that, he plays the perfect veil on himself, and then on the Deceiver's Gambit, the A2 ability, if you go down to the second paragraph, if the target ally is this champion, heals them. If he's under a perfect veil, he's going to also apply a buff spread, right? Taking a random buff from the target and placing it on all allies. So he does have a little hint of a Gamaran, but nothing as powerful as the Steal All Spread All. So Gamaran with the AoE Steal Spread is number 2 in the unique category here. So number 3 is going to be the Queen of Hearts. Yes, the Queen of Hearts has the Death Brand debuff. So at the time of this recording, she's the only champion with the Death Brand debuff. Now the Death Brand debuff,
Or for short, the Flintstone
is a simple one to understand. Anybody who dies while they're under the Death Brand debuff, again, will not be able to be revived. So it's a debuff where it actually leads to block revive. So that's number 3. Well, we opened the video talking about him. We might as well mention him now. It's Carnage. Carnage has the Seal ability. Now, Seal is an interesting one. There's actually a Master Seal ability too, but no champion has it. The Seal debuff blocks effects from gear sets and masteries, except for stat boosts granted by artifacts and accessories, as well as masteries that only boost stats like Blade Disciple and Flawless Execution, okay? So, you know, the accuracy boosts and stuff, those won't count, but all other masteries and all other set effects will be blocked by enemies under a seal, such as a protected debuff from a protection set, Master Seal, or Ignore Defense from a Savage set. Master Seal, it is an enhanced version of this debuff, which additionally blocks the effects of blessings except for stat boosts. So there you go. Seal and Master Seal debuffs don't block effects that are activated before those skills were placed. So there it is. It's Carnage, the absolute monster of a control champion and a damage dealer, all baked into one very complex but very, very good, I think, underrated mythical champion that we can all eventually get from the Cursed City. So he makes the list at number 4. Next up is going to be good old Odin Faefather. So he is the only champion to have the Berserk debuff. So what does Berserk do on his A1 ability? Well, it increases the damage inflicted by 50%, but it also increases the damage received by 50%, which is actually really cool, especially in his kit, because of how hard hitting his A3 is and the fact that it's tied to a revive. So he's the only champion that can place the Berserk debuff. Of course, it doesn't work against bosses. Next up is going to be a mythical, and it's good old Gizmak the Terrible. Imagine opening up a round with increased crit damage, increased crit rate, increased speed on all allies, gain an extra turn, place an HP burn that can't be resisted on all enemies, come back into the second form, still the same turn basically, right? Go in AoE attack, kill everybody, get another extra turn, decrease defense at the same time, and then go into another turn and take a pain link or place a pain link. Also place a taunt on this dude. Taunt, by the way, is a pretty rare buff, but almost like 10 or 11 champions have it in the game. There's a lot of buffs that seem to me to be really rare that actually the amount of champions that do it, same thing with the debuffs, are starting to stack up. Even like Sheep, there's Armans and some Wukong. There's a lot of 2s out there that I imagine you guys will have in the comments about like, well, you forgot about this. Well, instant turn, for example, Shuzen and Aliyah. There's a lot of 2s, but only a few 1s, and one of them is the Pain Link debuff. Oh, what a powerful and nasty debuff. What does it do? The Pain Link debuff causes the affected champion to receive a percentage of all damage received by the enemy who placed the debuff. The enemy receives 100% of the damage inflicted to them. The amount of the damage received depends on the enemy who placed the debuff. If it was the Head of Suffering, then the Pain Link debuff causes the affected champion to receive 15% of that damage received by the Head of Suffering. If it was placed on by an enemy champion, the percentage of the damage received will be specified in that champion's skill description. The Pain Link debuff cannot be blocked or removed and can have its duration increased or decrease. It can have its duration increase or decrease. Receiving the Pain Link debuff will awaken champions under a sleep debuff. If a champion's under both Pain Link debuff and a block damage buff, they won't receive any damage from the Pain Link debuff. So in Gizmak's ability, when calculating the damage inflicted by the Pain Link debuff, 75% of the attacker's skill multiplier is reflected. Very interesting. And then it's ignoring 100% of the target's defense. So there we go. Gizmak the Terrible has Pain Link, and only Gizmak the Terrible.
There's something on your face. It was pain.
Next up is actually a buff, and it's from Yansa Grail Bearer. Yansa is actually very, very unique because she also has an ability that ignores block debuffs. Only a few of those out there in the game, but we're actually talking about the Poison Cloud on her A2. Now, this is not the Head of Blight Poison Cloud. This is a champion Poison Cloud. She was the first, and at the time of this recording, the only champion that has this buff inside the game. So what does it do? The Poison Cloud buff blocks damage from poison debuffs. Also, enemies can only land weak hits on champions under a Poison Cloud buff. If a champion receives an HP burn debuff before a Poison Cloud buff is applied, then the effects of the Poison Cloud won't work, but the buff itself will not be removed. It's not affected by spread buff and increase buff duration effects. While we're here, there's actually quite a few champions in the game that play Stone Skin, so that's not on our list, but it was super rare. I think maybe Arbias was the first one. Alil, does he play it? I think Alil has it, but now a few have it, including that new legendary dwarf who I totally am spacing out his name. Arnorn the Shining. Arnorn the Shining has a Stone Skin on his passive, so Stone Skin didn't make the list, but I'll tell you what did, guys. And last but certainly not least in today's video is going to be Ebbs the Anomaly. This guy, this is his alternate form. He looks like just insane, very sick visuals, especially on that alternate form. So he has Necrosis. What does Necrosis do? Actually, there's a lot to this debuff, so let's read through it together because eventually, hopefully, we'll all have him from farming Chimera after about 10 years. So when the enemy champion dies, a single Necrosis stack is placed on all other alive enemies. They're allies of the Deado. When another champion dies, an additional Necrosis stack will be placed on all other enemies, and so on and so forth. Each Necrosis stack deals damage equal to 5% of a champion's max HP at the beginning of their turn, a slow death. For example, if a champion has 3 Necrosis stacks, damage equal to 15% of their max HP will be dealt to them at the beginning of their turn. Necrosis stacks do not decrease upon activation at the beginning of a champion's turn. The only way they can be decreased is by reviving. Necrosis stack is placed on a champion irrespective of the number of debuffs that are currently on them, meaning that there's no cap at 10 debuffs for Necrosis stacks. Damage dealt by Necrosis cannot be increased by other effects. The placement of Stone Skin buffs will remove Necrosis. Very interesting there. If there are any dead enemy champions in the battle after a Stone Skin buff expires, Necrosis stacks equal to the number of dead enemy champions will be reapplied. So the reapplication after the expiration of Stone Skin will reapply the Necrosis. When a dead enemy champion is revived, a single Necrosis stack is removed from all alive enemies. If multiple champions are revived, Necrosis stacks will be removed equal to the number of the champions revived. That is, I don't know if I want to say needlessly complex with the Stone Skin, but I don't know. I kind of like it. What about you guys? There's a lot going on with Necrosis, but it seems like a very interesting addition to the game in terms of debuffs. So did I forget anything, guys? That's it. That's all I have for you. But there's a lot, like I said, that was 2 or 3 champions that can do it. For example, in Feeble, there's like Bambus, there's Androck as well. There's 1 or 2 others. There's block passive skills, very, very rare. but Rhonda has it, Carnage has it, Ramen 2 has it as well. There is Intercept, Wixwell has it, what's her name? Lamansu has it as well.
Lamasu.
So there's a lot. There's Sheep, like I said, Armans and Sun Wukong. There's Remove Sheep with Lady Noelle and Shuzen. There's Instant Turns. Again, there's a lot of 2s and a lot of 3s out there. Let me know, though, if I forgot anything that only one champion can do in terms of buffs or debuffs out there in the game. Hey, thanks for watching. This is a fun video. Hopefully you learned something, too, when you encounter more of these buffs and debuffs, or when Plarium adds more champions with these buffs or debuffs in the future. Thank you for watching until the end of the video, and as always, take care, guys.